A strange signal from the ocean. It was a quiet evening when an old man named Jack sat alone in his cabin near the sea. He used to be a rescue pilot for the Coast Guard, but now he lived a peaceful life away from the noise. He spent most of his time fixing radios, old drones, and listening to strange sounds from the ocean. Sometimes he heard whale songs, sometimes ship signals, and sometimes only silence. But on this day, something different happened. A strange signal came through his old radio. It was soft, broken, and repeating like someone calling for help. He leaned closer and adjusted the frequency. It sounded like a voice not from this world. The message was short. It said emergency life support failing. Stranded island child in danger. Jack's heart beat faster. He checked the signal source. It pointed toward a small island far away, a place the maps had forgotten. He tried calling the Coast Guard, but no one listened. They laughed and said maybe he was hearing dolphins again, but Jack knew something was wrong. He had heard many signals in his life, but nothing like this. He made a choice. He packed his drone kit, his old backpack, and some food. Then he started his small seaplane and flew into the sky. The wind was strong and clouds were heavy, but Jack was not afraid. Hours passed, and the island came into view. It was small, surrounded by black rocks and thick mist. No boats, no signs of life, just trees and silence. As he flew closer, something strange happened. His compass stopped working. The plane shook like something pulled it down. Then the engine failed. Jack quickly hit the emergency landing switch. The plane crashed near the beach wings, broke, water splashed, but Jack was safe. Got out and checked his drone. It was still working. He sent it up to scan the island. The drone flew over trees and rocks. Suddenly it stopped and turned back. The camera showed something moving. A small figure running in the jungle. Not human, it had glowing eyes, thin arms, and it was fast. Jack followed the signal on foot. He moved slowly through the forest. Leaves crunched under his boots. Strange bird sounds echoed around him. He found broken metal pieces on the ground, burned trees, a long trail of something heavy being dragged. Then he saw it, a large silver object half buried in the dirt. A spaceship, or at least what was left of one. The door was broken. Inside it was dark. He heard breathing. Jack stepped inside and raised his flashlight. Two figures were hiding in the corner. One was tall with green skin, silver eyes, and a calm face. The other was a small girl hiding behind her. The girl looked scared. Her eyes glowed like stars. She held a piece of metal like a toy. She was shaking. Jack raised his hands slowly. He said, "I am not here to hurt you." The tall figure looked at him. Her voice was soft but strange. She said, "Help." Then she fell. Jack ran forward. The girl cried but did not move. He gave them water, some food. The tall woman ate slowly like she had not eaten for days. The girl held her hand and looked at Jack without blinking. Jack asked what happened. She said, "We escaped. Our ship was hit. We landed here. The others are gone." Jack asked, "Are you alone now?" She said, "Yes, but not safe." Jack said, "What do you mean?" She looked at the trees outside and whispered something else. "Came with us." The little girl looked at the jungle and held her mother tighter. Her small voice said, "Monster." Jack felt a cold chill in his back. He looked outside. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. He decided to help them. He would fix his drone, set up camp, protect them. But deep inside he knew this was not just a rescue. It was the start of something bigger. Something strange, something dangerous. He had found a hungry alien widow and her little girl stranded on a small island. Now he was their only hope. Now he was their guardian, and somewhere in the jungle, the real danger was watching. Asterisk. The sun rose slowly over the small island as Jack sat beside the broken alien pod, watching the sky turn from dark blue to light gold. Beside him, the alien woman and her daughter still slept curled together on a blanket made from leaves and torn fabric. The child breathed quietly, her small hand holding a strange glowing stone. The woman was still weak but alive. Jack had given them food and water, and they had accepted him. But their eyes still held fear. Jack stood and stretched his tired arms. He looked at the trees around them. The jungle was thick and full of shadows. Something did not feel right. It was too quiet again. No birds, no insects, just wind through the trees and the distant crash of waves. He walked around the clearing, checking the edges for footprints. He found some, but they were not his, and they were not human. Long, deep claw marks pressed into the mud, leading from the trees to the edge of the broken ship, then back again. Jack returned to the pod and waited. When the woman woke, she looked at him and said in her soft voice, "It comes at night." He asked what comes. She said it was a creature from her world. It was not meant to live. It was built for war, a living weapon. It escaped during the crash, and now it hunts. It cannot be reasoned with, and it does not sleep. Jack looked at the small girl and asked, "Does it want her?" The woman nodded and said, "She is different. She was born during the war. She is not just my daughter. She is something more, something powerful. The creature can feel her. It follows her." Jack understood the danger, but he also felt something else, a sense of purpose. He had spent years alone. Now he had a reason to fight. That night Jack set up small traps using old wires and sharp branches. He placed the drone high in a tree, watching the clearing. He kept a flashlight and a flare gun close. The woman stayed inside the pod, while the girl sat outside drawing in the dirt with her glowing stone. Jack watched her carefully. She was quiet, but her eyes were always moving, like she could feel something others could not. As the sky grew darker, the air became cold. Mist rolled in from the sea, and the trees began to sway, even though there was no wind. The woman stepped outside and stood still, listening. Then she looked at Jack and said, "It is near." The girl stood up and dropped her stone. It rolled across the ground and stopped beside a tree. Then it began to shake. Jack raised the drone camera and looked at the screen. Something was moving between the trees. Tall, thin, and fast. Too fast. He heard a growl. Not loud, not close, but deep like thunder far away. The girl cried out, and the woman grabbed her. Jack raised his flare gun and fired into the sky. Red light filled the clearing. For a moment the jungle lit up like fire, and then Jack saw Ida's shadow, tall and thin, with too many arms and glowing yellow eyes. It stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at them. Then it stepped back and disappeared into the dark. The woman said, "It is learning. It is watching. It will wait until we are weak." Jack stayed awake the rest of the night. The creature did not return, but the traps were broken by morning. Something strong had smashed through them, like they were nothing. Jack knew they could not stay in the open. He searched the island with the drone and found a small cave near the cliff. It was hard to reach, but hidden from the trees. He helped the woman and her child move there during the day. Inside it was dry and safe. He placed small stones around the entrance. If anything moved them, they would hear in the cave. The woman told him more. She had been a soldier. Her ship had been escaping the last battle of a long war. She had tried to run from the past, but it had followed her to this world. The girl sat in the corner holding her stone again. It glowed brighter now. She whispered to herself. Jack could not understand the words, but they sounded like a song. That night the wind howled outside the cave. The stones shifted. Jack held his knife. The woman held her daughter, but nothing entered. When the sun rose, Jack stepped outside. He found new marks near the cliff. Claw marks closer than before. He knew now that the creature was testing them, waiting. It wanted the girl, but it would take its time. Jack returned to the cave and looked at the child. She looked back at him with her glowing eyes, not afraid, not angry, just waiting. He realized then the creature was not the only one watching the girl. She was watching too, and she was changing. The fog came early that evening, thicker than before, moving across the island like a slow river of white smoke, swallowing trees and rocks and sound. Jack stood outside the cave holding a stick wrapped in burning cloth, his eyes scanning the mist. As it crept closer, the air was cold and still, and each breath felt heavy, like something watched from deep within the fog behind him. The alien woman stood quietly, her arms wrapped around her daughter, who stared at the sky without blinking. The stone in her hands no longer glowed, but pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deep and strange. Jack stepped forward, placing small lights along the path from the cave to the edge of the cliff. He had made the lights using broken parts from the pod and his own gear. They blinked in soft blue colors, casting strange shapes into the white mist. He knew the creature was near. He had not seen it again since the night of the flare, but he had felt it every day, hiding, watching, waiting. The fog made it worse. It moved like it was a live hiding sound, and turning every shadow into a threat. The woman walked to Jack and said, "The child is not well. She dreams things that feel real. She speaks in old words she never learned. She glows in her sleep." Jack looked at the girl sitting near the cave wall, her head resting on her knees, her eyes open and empty. He asked if she was afraid. The woman said no, she is not afraid, but she is not the same anymore. As the night fell, the fog became thicker until Jack could barely see the nearest tree. He held the burning torch higher and listened. Nothing moved. No wind, no insects, no birds, only the sound of water dripping from leaves and the soft hum of the stone in the girl's hand. Suddenly the lights along the path blinked twice, then went out one by one. Jack raised his drone and flew it into the fog. The screen showed only gray shapes. Then it caught something. A tall black figure standing still among the trees. It did not move. It did not blink. It just stared at the drone until the feed cut to static. Jack ran back toward the cave, shouting for the woman. She grabbed the child and stepped behind a rock. The girl looked up and whispered one word: "Closer." The fog near the cave began to spin like a slow whirlpool. Leaves rose into the air, and the mist swirled around them. The girl stepped forward. Her mother tried to stop her, but she did not listen. She raised her hand, and the stone in her palm flashed bright white. For a moment, the fog cleared in a circle. Around them, Jack saw everything: the trees, the rocks, and the creature standing just 20 steps away. It was tall and thin, with sharp arms and a face made of bone. Its eyes were black, but they held light inside. It looked at the girl, not at Jack, not at the woman, just at her. The girl stared back. Then she fainted. The stone dropped from her hand, and the fog rushed back. Jack fired the flare gun again. Red light filled the area. The creature was gone. The woman picked up her daughter and carried her back into the cave. Jack followed, closing the entrance with a wooden board. He sat near the girl and checked her pulse. She was breathing, but her skin felt warm like fire. The woman said she used too much. She is connected to the creature every time it gets closer, she feels it. And now it feels her back. Jack looked at the stone on the ground. It no longer pulsed. It had cracks running across it. It was not just a toy. It was a part of something much bigger. Asked the woman where it came from. She said it came from the core of their ship. It was alive, a small piece of their world. The child had bonded with it since birth outside. The fog was still heavy. Jack took turns watching the entrance with the woman. The girl slept quietly, her hands twitching from strange dreams. As morning light began to break through the mist, Jack stepped outside. The air smelled of ash and salt. He walked down the cliff path and found deep claw marks on the rocks. The creature had climbed, watched, then left again. But why had it not attacked? Jack returned to the cave with new fear in his heart. The creature was not hunting them like an animal. It was studying them. It was waiting for something. Maybe the child, maybe the stone, maybe something else. He sat beside the girl and placed the cracked stone in her hand. Her fingers closed around it. Without waking, a single pulse of light ran through the stone. Soft and dim, but still alive. Jack knew the worst had not come yet. Not even close. The sky was darker than usual, and the clouds above the island moved in slow, heavy circles, as if waiting for something to rise from below. Jack sat near the fire inside the cave, watching the girl sleep, her small hands glowing faintly under the blanket. The stone she held was cracked and dim, but warm like a living heart that refused to stop beating. Woman stood near the entrance, her eyes fixed on the forest, her body still, her breath calm. She had not spoken much since the night of the fog, but Jack knew something had changed. She was no longer just afraid, she was preparing for something. Jack moved beside her and asked again, "What is that thing? Why is it after you? And what is this stone the girl carries?" The woman turned slowly, and her silver eyes met his. She said, "It is time you know everything." She walked back to the fire, sat down beside her daughter, and placed her hand over the girl's heart. The glow from the child spread across her skin like threads of light reaching out and then fading again. She began to speak with a voice that was soft but full of weight, like someone carrying a secret for too long. She said, "I was not always a mother. I was born in the high cities of the sky world, trained as a guardian of the stars, raised in war, built for battle, taught never to feel. I was one of many soldiers who protected the crystal core, the heart of our power, the thing that fed our ships and lit our homes. But then came the rebellion. One of our own turned against us, a brilliant mind who believed life should be free, not shaped by order and law. He created the creature you now fear, not one. Many creatures with no voice, no soul, no purpose but to hunt and adapt and destroy. We fought for years across space, across moons, across the ruins of dead worlds. I was wounded in one battle and sent to recover on a quiet station. There I met someone, not a soldier, but a healer. He showed me peace. He showed me how to live without a gun in my hand. We escaped together. We ran far away and hid in an empty system full of light and silence. There our daughter was born, but the war did not forget us. They found us. He died protecting us, and I fled again. My ship was damaged. We crashed here, and one of the creatures followed us." Jack listened in silence, his heart heavy. He looked at the girl. She was not just an alien child. She was born of peace during a time of war, and now the war had come for her. He asked, "What does the creature want?" The woman said, "It wants her light. She is connected to the core. Through the stone, she is like a seed from the ancient power. The creature feeds on that light. It will not stop until it takes all of it." Jack stood and walked outside the cave. The wind was sharp, and the trees swayed like they were whispering warnings. Looked at the broken pod on the cliff below. It was still there, silent, useless, but it held parts he could use. He spent the day climbing down to the wreck. He pulled wires, engines, power cores, anything that still had life. He carried them back piece by piece. The woman helped him. She knew how to build things. Together they created a new kind of trap, a pulse trap, something that could push the creature away, maybe even hurt it. That night they placed the trap near the cave, hidden under leaves and stones. The drone watched from above. The wind was quiet. The fog did not come. Girl woke in the middle of the night. Her eyes were glowing. She said, "The creature is close but confused. It feels fear." The woman held her hand and whispered a prayer in a language Jack could not understand. The girl smiled. Then she said, "The creature is not alone anymore. Others may come." Jack felt the weight of those words. If more creatures followed the signal, then the island was not just a place of danger. It was a beacon. He knew they had to leave, but the ship was broken and the signal was weak. Still, he had an idea. He walked to the cave wall and opened his bag. Inside, he had a small beacon kit, old and dusty. He began to fix it using the power core from the pod and parts from the drone. The woman helped again. She showed him alien ways to connect wires and balance energy. By morning, the beacon was complete. It blinked with a soft blue light, sending a call across the sky. Jack stood with the girl in his arms and the woman beside him. They looked at the sky far above. Clouds moved faster now, as if something far away had heard the call. Jack knew they were no longer just hiding. They were preparing for what comes next. The sky turned red at sunrise, as if the sun itself had bled across the clouds, and the ocean below held its breath, waiting for the day to break. Jack stood on the cliff beside the broken escape pod, watching waves crash against the rocks far below. The beacon they built blinked slowly, its light reaching toward the stars, like a voice calling for help. Inside the cave, the alien woman cleaned the wound on her daughter's arm. Where the light had escaped during the night, the child had screamed in her sleep again, her body glowing bright white, then dimming like a dying flame. The mother said nothing, but her eyes told Jack that the time had come to stop hiding. Jack gathered the weapons they had made from scrap and alien metal. He strapped wires across his arms and placed shock cells into the traps. He tied a sharpened steel rod to a long branch and practiced swinging it through the air, each motion steady, each breath sharp. He was no longer a man lost on an island. He was a soldier. Again the woman joined him outside. She carried the core stone, now wrapped in cloth and glowing softly. She placed it inside a metal box covered in carvings from her ship. She said, "This will call it. This will make it come." Jack looked into the jungle. He felt no wind, no sound, no birds. Only waiting, only the deep breath of the forest before the storm. They placed the traps around the clearing, wires stretched between trees, energy spikes buried in the soil, blades hidden under leaves. The girl stood silently beside one tree, watching with eyes that no longer blinked. She whispered words no one had taught her, words that made the air feel heavy and the sky darker. The sun reached its highest point. Then everything stopped. The leaves froze, the waves paused, even the air seemed to stand still. Then a sound came from the trees, low like a growl mixed with metal grinding. Then a shape, tall, thin, and black. It stepped into the clearing, slowly, arms hanging like broken branches. Its face had no eyes, but it turned toward the girl. Jack moved between them, holding the spear high. The creature stopped. Then it roared. The traps triggered, energy flashed, spikes shot upward. Wires snapped with lightning, but the creature was fast. It twisted its body in ways no living thing should. It dodged the first trap, then the second. Then it was inside the clearing. Jack fought with the spear. He struck its side. The metal hit, but did not pierce. The creature swung its arm and sent Jack flying into a tree. The woman raised the metal box and opened it. The stone inside blazed with light. The creature screamed. It staggered back. Smoke rose from its skin. The girl stepped forward. Her body lit from within. She raised her hand and spoke in a voice not her own. The light hit the creature. It shrieked and fell to the ground, twitching, but not dead. It rose again, slower this time, broken, but not finished. Jack stood and picked up the spear. He charged again, this time aiming for the neck. The spear sank deep. The creature howled and fell back, crashing into the traps. Electric shock ran through its body. It shook and then stopped moving. Silence returned. Jack dropped to his knees, breathing hard. The woman ran to her daughter, who was now shaking, her light dimmed and fading. She said, "The stone is not enough. She needs more than we have." Jack looked at the creature, its body still twitching, still alive, still dangerous. He knew this was only the beginning. He dragged the creature's body to the cliff. He pushed it over into the sea. The waves swallowed it, but deep inside Jack knew it was not dead. He returned to the cave where the girl now slept, her breathing slow and deep. The woman sat beside her, holding her hand, her face calm, but her eyes full of storm. Jack asked, "What happens now?" The woman said, "Others will come. This one was just a scout. The real danger has not yet arrived." Jack looked at the sky. The beacon still blinked, but now he was not sure if rescue would come, or something worse. He sat beside the fire and stared into the flames. The girl moved in her sleep. A single word escaped her lips: "Run." The wind howled through the trees as the sky turned a deep purple, and the ocean crashed harder against the rocks, like it too could feel the fear rising. From the island, Jack stood outside the cave, staring into the dark forest where the creature had come from. His body ached from the last fight, his arms covered in bruises, his ribs tight with pain, but he did not sit down. He knew what tonight meant. He knew this was the last night inside the cave. The alien woman sat with her daughter, who slept quietly, her light no longer glowing, her skin cold like stone. The stone in her hands had lost all color, now dull and cracked and silent. The woman whispered old songs from her world, songs of hope and strength and goodbye. Jack returned to the cave, carrying the last pieces of the broken ship. Wires, metals, power cells, anything that still worked. He laid them on the ground and looked at the woman. She nodded slowly and began to build something. For hours they worked together, using what little strength they had. She connected parts with strange tools made from bone and crystal. He held lights steady and tightened the wires. They built a pulse core, a final trap, something strong enough to burn the creature into ash. They would place it at the center of the clearing and draw the creature in. When it stepped close enough, they would trigger the core. But the core needed power, more power than they had. Woman said it would need a life to feed it, a willing spark, a living light. Jack froze and looked at the girl. The woman shook her head and said no, not her. She stood slowly, her body shaking, her eyes full of memories and fire. She said, I will be the spark. I brought this war here. I will end it. Jack stepped forward and said, no, there must be another way. But she only smiled and touched his shoulder. She said, protect her. Protect my child. That is all I asked. Jack said nothing. He looked at the girl, who still slept without dreams. Then he nodded. The woman carried the pulse core to the clearing. Jack followed, setting traps along the edge, using the last wires and cells. The drone watched from above, sending a silent feed to the cave. Then they waited. Night grew colder. The stars disappeared behind thick clouds. The wind fell silent. Then the sound returned, slow footsteps, twisting branches. A growl from the dark. The creature stepped into the clearing, larger than before. Its body healed from the last fight, its arms longer, sharper, its face more twisted. It saw the woman. It smelled the light inside her. It moved toward her with hunger. She stood still, holding the pulse core in her hands. She whispered to the sky, and her body began to glow, not white, but gold. The creature leapt forward. Jack shouted and fired a flare. The light blinded the creature for a moment. The traps snapped, the wires shocked. The air screamed. The creature pushed through and reached the woman. She smiled once more. Then she triggered the pulse. A wave of golden light exploded from her chest. The core cracked. The creature screamed. The ground shook. Jack fell back. The cave lit up with fire. When it ended, the clearing was silent. The woman was gone. Only ash remained where she had stood. The creature lay broken, torn in pieces, its body no longer moving, its face still twisted in rage. Jack walked to the ashes and knelt. He picked up the metal box she had carried. Inside, the cracked stone now shined again. He returned to the cave. Girl was awake, her eyes full of tears. She said, I saw her. She is light now. Jack held her close and said, your mother saved us. But the girl shook her head and said, no. She saved you. I must protect you now. Jack looked into her glowing eyes and saw strength he had never seen before. Not in soldiers, not in warriors, only in her. The beacon still blinked outside. Faster now. A signal had been received. Far above the clouds, something moved. A shape cut through the sky. Silent silver coming closer. Jack looked at the girl and said, are you ready? She took his hand and said, I was born ready. They stepped outside together, wind in their hair, ash in the air. It was no longer the end. It was the beginning of something new. The wind carried the last ashes into the sea as the silver ship descended through the dark sky, like a falling star sent from another world. Jack stood on the edge of the cliff, holding the child's hand, while the beacon blinked behind them faster and stronger. Its message finally answered. The ocean below was calm. Now no fog, no storm, only light across the water and hope in the air. The girl looked up, her glowing eyes watching the ship as it slowed above the island, then hovered just above the trees. A quiet hum filled the air, soft and warm, like a song without words. Jack could feel it in his bones, like a heartbeat, not his own. The ship opened. From within stepped 3 figures. Tall, smooth, silver skin, long arms, calm faces. They were not soldiers, not machines. They were guardians. They approached slowly with open hands, no weapons, no words, only peace. The girl stepped forward. Jack moved with her, never letting go of her hand. The tallest guardian knelt down and looked into the girl's eyes, then placed one hand over her heart. The stone inside her chest glowed again, pure white and whole. The guardian turned to Jack and spoke in perfect, clear English. He said, you have cared for her. You have stood in the fire. You are not one of us. But you are not alone. Jack said, she is my family now. I will not leave her. The guardian said, she is part of something greater. Her light must be protected. Many will come to take it. Many will fear it. But with care she will become more than they ever imagined. Jack said, where do we go now? The guardian looked at the stars and said, you can return to your world, or you can rise with us, but you must choose together. The girl looked at Jack, her eyes bright with tears and light. She said, I feel them. They are like my mother. They sing without sound. They know who I am. Jack knelt beside her. He said, I promised to protect you. I promised your mother I would stay, but I need to know what you want, not what they want. Not what I want. The girl rapped her arms around him, and said, "I want you to come with me. I want to learn. I want to grow, but not without you." Jack stood. He looked once more at the island. The broken pod, the cave to see it, was no longer his home. It was the place he became something more. He turned to the guardians and nodded. They walked together into the ship. The door closed behind them with no sound. The light shifted. The island became smaller and smaller. Then it was gone. Inside the ship, the girl stood by a window watching. Stars rushed past. She reached out as if trying to touch them. Jack stood behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. She looked back and said, "Do you think she can see us?" Jack smiled. He said, "I think she is everywhere now, in the stars and the light." In youth, guardians led them to a room full of light and memory. Images of worlds long lost. Places built from light. Cities that floated, forests that sang. They offered Jack a place, not as a soldier, not as a visitor, but as a guardian. He accepted, not because he wanted to escape Earth, but because he had found something worth protecting forever. Years passed. The girl grew taller, her light stronger, her voice filled with power and kindness. She became a guide for others like her, lost children, strange souls, wandering lights. Jack remained by her side, teaching her, learning from her, becoming something new. One day, they returned to Earth, not to stay, but to remember. They stood on the same island, now quiet, now peaceful. Flowers grew where ashes once fell. The sea whispered to them. Jack placed a stone on the ground. It glowed faintly, not with power, but with memory. The girl said, "Thank you." He said, "For what?" She said, "For being my guardian." He smiled, looked at the stars, and whispered, "Always."